The sun was setting, casting long shadows over a sprawling field of golden wheat. The air was thick with humidity, a reminder of the storm that had just passed through. As the first drops of rain began to fall, 3 silhouettes crept along the edge of the field, eyes glinting with mischief. They moved with urgency, almost like jungle cats stalking their prey, drawn by the promise of easy pickings. In their eyes, this farm was just another target. They thought they were clever, a trio of thieves ready to cart off whatever they could grab. But tonight they would meet not just a farmer, but a force as relentless as the storm. Luke, the self-proclaimed leader of the trio, glared across the field. Just a few tools and some crops. We can be in and out in 5 minutes, he hissed, his fingers twitching with anticipation. A shiver of excitement danced through him. He had made a career out of petty theft, always seeking that adrenaline rush, the high of skirting. So it was hard for him to imagine that anyone could stand in his way. Tara, the oldest of the 3, whispered, looking over her shoulder nervously. She had been the voice of reason, but tonight her caution felt like an anchor weighing them down. Jackson chimed in, a hint of bravado in his voice. He was the youngest, and his eagerness to impress hung in the air like thick smoke. It's just some tools. And so, under the fading light of day, they slipped into the field, hearts racing with the thrill of the hunt. But in their blind pursuit of quick profit, they had overlooked something. The farmer, a tall, sturdy man named Sam, was not just some faceless entity behind a weathered barn. He was a guardian of the land, living and breathing the very spirit of hard work and resilience. He'd spent countless hours toiling under the sun, pouring his heart into the land. Suddenly, he emerged from the barn, silhouetted against the twilight. Sam paused, his keen eyes catching the movement in the tall grass. Something was off. His muscles tensed and instinct kicked in. He grabbed the old wooden shovel leaning against the barn's wall, feeling its familiar weight in his hands. It was not just a tool, it was an extension of himself, a symbol of his labor, ready to defend everything he held dear. As Luke and his crew pried open a rusted shed, a bone-deep chill ran through Sam. The sound of metal scraping against metal sent a jolt straight to his heart. Anger surged within him, quickly eclipsing the confusion. How dare they invade his sanctuary? He stepped forward, urgency blending with fury. When he crested the hill, Sam's outlines were stark against the darkening sky. Hey, his voice boomed across the field, a deep, resonating echo that seemed to shake the ground beneath their feet. Luke's bravado faltered, but only for a moment. Looking for something, he stammered, his bravado now little more than a shaky facade. Looking for trouble, more like it, Sam retorted, advancing with determined steps. A glint of steel caught the last rays of the sun as he brandished the shovel. It was his armor, his warning shot. The weight of his stare pinned them to the ground. Tara felt a rush of adrenaline, her instincts screaming at her to flee. We should go, she said urgently, grabbing Luke's arm, but Luke, fueled by a mix of pride and desperation, shook her off. We can't just back down. Jackson, still driven by bravado, sneered. Yeah, we'll just grab what we can, and with pent-up fury, Sam lunged forward. His voice dripped with intensity, a raw force that stunned Luke, Tara, and Jackson. They had thought they were the hunters, yet here they stood on the precipice of becoming prey. The trio pivoted as one, glancing at each other with wide eyes. Sam's aura was overwhelming. It was the fierceness of every farmer who had ever faced a storm or a drought, the grit formed from years of struggle. In that moment, they were no longer just 3 thieves. They were 3 frail shadows against a titan of resilience. Tara cried, fear rising in her chest like bile, but Luke's pride refused to yield. No, he yelled, standing his ground. His heart raced not only with adrenaline but embarrassment. He was the leader, the one who had led them here, and retreat felt like a personal defeat. Sam swung the shovel expertly, not to hurt, but to create space. Get off my land, he commanded, his voice firm, less a threat and more a hardened, protective declaration. The bright metal cut through the darkness, illuminating his resolve. Jackson's bravado shattered. He stammered, backing away, glancing from Sam to Luke as if trying to gauge their next move. But Luke stood firm, fists clenching at his sides. We're not backing down. Yet even he could feel a crack in his own confidence as he took in Sam's fierce determination. In that moment of indecision, Sam made a choice. He dropped the shovel to the ground with a clang that echoed in the fading light. You really want to do this? You want to wreck everything I've built? It was as if he pulled their hearts out of their chests, laying bare the raw, painful truth of struggle. The wheat waved behind him, shimmering like an ocean, each stalk a testament to labor, sweat, and countless hours spent fighting against nature. Suddenly, Luke faltered. A flicker of doubt crossed his face. Did they really want to fight for? What? A few rusty tools. The anger in Sam's eyes was impenetrable, an honest reflection of a life lived for something greater. Retreat suddenly seemed like the wiser option, but pride still pulled at Luke like a puppet on a string. Tara urged. She couldn't stand to watch as the tension thickened, a rubber band stretched to its limit. But as she said it, Jackson grabbed her arm. We can't look like cowards, he whispered, fear and uncertainty swirling in his voice. Sam's presence was commanding, a living reminder of the power structures that governed their world. The 3 of them stood there, frozen, caught in the crossfire of vulnerability and pride. Luke's defiance wavered under the weight of Sam's embodied strength. Let me make it easy for you, Sam said, lowering his voice as if speaking a sacred truth. You can walk away now and never look back." The stillness hung heavily in the air. The humidity clung to their skin, an almost palpable blanket of tension. Luke opened his mouth, ready to retaliate, but the fire inside him flickered dangerously as Sam's unyielding gaze powered through him. For the first time, he felt the gravity of his choices. His body, previously tense with bravado, relaxed just enough to see clearly greed had led him here, but the reality before him made him rethink everything. "Let's go," he finally muttered, the fight in him folding under the weight of something deeper. Jackson didn't need to be told twice. "Yeah, let's just go," he echoed, his voice ragged. Tara pulled him forward, relief washing over her as they began to retreat, step by hesitant step. Sam watched them go, a wave of compassion washing over him. They were lost, but maybe there was still time for them to find their way back. He sensed their departure wasn't just physical, it was emotional. As they crossed the threshold of the field, the last vestiges of daylight surrendered to the approaching night. Darkness enveloped the land, but not the heart. Sam understood now the weight of his day. He didn't just defend his land, he stood for something greater. And though the trio of looters slipped away into the night, they carried with them a lesson that would echo in their minds long after they left the farm behind. Some scores were never worth the risk, and not every battle was about what you could take, but what you choose to value. Underneath the vast sky littered with stars, the echoes of their encounter would linger, a turning point in a narrative yet unwritten, resting on a decision that stretched far beyond that dusky field. The farmer had stood his ground, not just against them, but against a cycle of wrongdoing, creating ripples of change that even he couldn't foresee, shifting the very fabric of their lives forever. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in vibrant hues of orange and purple. In the distance, an old farmhouse stood resolute, surrounded by fields ripe for harvest. Somewhere in the shadows, three figures moved cautiously, hearts pounding with the rhythm of their heartbeat, eyes wide with greed. These were not ordinary folks, but looters drawn by the allure of a quick score, a flash in the pan that could change their lives, or so they thought. "Just a few tools," whispered Luke, the leader of the trio, his voice laced with excitement. "We get in, grab what we can, and get out." The thrill of the heist stirred within him, igniting an all-too-familiar fire. He had done this before, always looking for something that didn't belong to him, something that could fill the void he felt deep inside. Tara, standing close by, bit her lip, her nerves showing. "I don't know, Luke. What if we get caught?" Jackson, the youngest, cut in, enthusiasm bubbling over. "This is old stuff. It's junk to them." The innocence in his voice contrasted sharply with the reality of their actions, but the allure of fast cash made his resolve unshakable. As they crept further into the field, the air thick with humidity, they spotted the barn, a treasure trove of old tools, rusty equipment, and a lifetime worth of labor left behind. Their eyes gleamed, the darkness illuminating their misguided intentions. But out of the shadows behind the barn's wooden walls stood Farmer Sam, a man whose weathered hands and sun-kissed skin told a story of dedication and hard work. He had been watching, aware of the dangers that lurked outside his ivied walls. Those that would take, not give. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the night as the barn door swung open. Sam stepped into the dim light, square shoulders set like a boulder against the encroaching night. His voice boomed, catching everyone off guard. Luke's bravado wavered. Just checking out the equipment," he stammered, realization dawning on him that they were no longer the ones in control. Sam's eyes narrowed, a mixture of disbelief and anger flashing across his face. "This is my life's work you're messing with." Panic surged through Luke. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They had envisioned a smooth operation, a quick getaway, but the reality was far more daunting. He protested, hoping to conjure empathy in this formidable figure before him, but Sam wasn't having any of it. He'd spent years cultivating this land, defending it against storms, droughts, and all forms of adversity. The thought of strangers taking what was rightfully his ignited a fierce protectiveness deep within him. "I don't think you understand what you've done," he continued, stepping closer, eyes fixed on Luke with an intensity that pierced through the night. The shovel leaning against the barn was not a weapon, but a symbol of his survival. It grounded him, reminding him that he had the power to stand his ground. Desperation kicked in for Luke, flanked by his friends who had only moments ago been excited about their mission. Now they felt like cornered animals, edging away from this towering figure with his aura of strength. "Come on, man, let's just get what we came for and leave," Jackson chimed in, trying to regain some momentum. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Was there ever really an easy way out? For Sam, the answer was clear. You can walk away right now and no one gets hurt. But if you think you can take what's mine. Silence swallowed them. The air turned heavy with tension, a physical force pushing against them. Tara, feeling the weight of the moment, shifted nervously. "We should go," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Jackson hesitated. Sam raised the shovel, not in anger, but to signify the seriousness of his intent. "I'll give you one chance. Leave here and don't ever think of coming back. This is my family's land, my legacy." Luke felt the enormity of the situation pushing down on him, his heart pounding in his chest. Behind the bravado and the thirst for thrill, a flicker of awareness broke through. What were they really doing? Was this worth the risk? Walk away, Sam insisted, his voice steady, filled with resolve. Take a moment, truly think about what you want your life to be. In that moment, something shifted. A glimpse of the future flickered in Luke's mind, one not filled with the thrill of theft but with the heavy burden of consequence. With every heartbeat, he felt his resolve waver. The allure of quick cash began to feel hollow next to the conviction radiating from the farmer before him. Let's just go, Luke finally suggested, the bravery that had once coursed through him now turning to a soft, reluctant surrender. Jackson's face fell, disappointment lacing his features, but even he couldn't ignore the gravity of the farmer's words. Fine, okay. As they turned, Sam's heart pounded in his chest, knowing he had stood his ground not just for himself, but for something larger. His land, his lineage. Each step the intruders took was a silent vow between them and the larger tapestry of their lives. What would they do with this moment? Once they reached the edge of the field, the three paused, glancing back at Sam, who stood rooted to the spot. An unlikely peace settled over the evening, the stars blinking protectively above, as if witnessing an exchange of understanding. Suddenly, it hit them. They hadn't just walked away from a robbery. They had walked away from an opportunity to reflect on their lives, to think about the choices that had led them here. And Sam, the farmer, had become an unwitting guide, illuminating a path they hadn't known existed. They drifted back into town under the cloak of darkness, but a light flickered within them. That night, as they sat in silence, each grappling with their thoughts, they couldn't help but think of Sam, the man who stood tall against the weight of their decisions, a pillar of strength in the face of adversity. Weeks passed, and life returned to the inevitable grasp of routine. But Luke found himself restless, the thrill of a mundane life wearing thin. He couldn't shake the moment they turned from that farm. That was the day he realized that being a thief didn't define him. It was his choices that would shape his future. But the memories didn't come without a weight. Tara spoke up one evening, breaking the silence. What if we did something worthwhile? The suggestion hung in the air, a new chapter waiting to be penned. From that point on, they rallied together, seeking a purpose. They volunteered at local farms, learning the skills they once sought to exploit. Slowly but surely, they cultivated a sense of belonging, rooted not in identity theft but in honest labor. They forged connections in their community, learning from the trials of those who, just like Sam, faced every challenge head-on. Each grain of understanding, each act of kindness earned over weeks of dedication, washed away the remnants of their past decisions. And invariably, their thoughts returned to Sam the farmer, who had suffered silently, but stood strong when called upon. They would repay this debt, not with cash, but through the labor they now embraced, understanding the true value of every seed sown into the ground. Months later, under a blazing sun, they'd be making their way back to that very farm, not as looters, but as hands willing to offer their help. Each step forward felt less like a reckoning and more like a homecoming. The fields were not just land, but living reminders of hard work, tenacity, and the enduring spirit of those who dared to stand strong, and they were ready to be part of that spirit, ready to labor, ready to uplift. As they approached, they could see Sam bent over a row of crops, the sun forming a halo around him. They took a deep breath, steeling themselves for the encounter. This time they were not entering as thieves. They were stepping forth as equals, ready to learn from the very man they had tried to take from a man who had shown them the kind of strength that truly mattered. And as they reached the farmer, their hearts swelled with something new hope that they could change, that they could be more than their past choices. "We're here to help," Luke declared, a conviction stronger than any thrill he had ever known. Sam looked up, surprise flashing across his face, but it faded into a warm smile. "Well then, let's get to work," he replied, gesturing toward the fields. A sense of understanding passed between them, bridging the gap from past to future. In the heart of that field, the echoes of choices made and paths taken blended together, creating a new reality. They were no longer defined by a single night under the stars, but by the journey toward a life that champions strength, resilience, and growth. The looters had become something far greater, a family, a community, and a testament to the transformative power of choices made under pressure. In the fading light of dusk, three shadowy figures moved stealthily along a dirt road. The air was thick with tension as the last rays of sun cast elongated shadows behind them. Luke, the self-appointed leader, glanced at his companions, Tara and Jackson. They had planned this night carefully, mapping out the route and anticipating the treasures they would find. Just one more risky score, they thought, and they would be set for life. "Remember, just a few tools and some equipment," Luke whispered, excitement bubbling under his skin. They turned onto a gravel path flanked by fields of corn swaying gently in the breeze. A vast farm spread out before them, illuminated by the moonlight. It looked almost serene, yet their hearts were pounding with the thrill of danger. The farmhouse stood tall in the distance, an old but proud structure surrounded by rusted tools and abandoned machinery that told stories of years gone by. Tara hesitated. "This feels wrong, Luke." "Come on, Tara," Jackson chimed in, his youthful optimism contrasting sharply with Tara's apprehension. "It's just a couple of old tools." The lure of an easy score clouded their judgment as they crept closer, hearts racing with adrenaline. Shielding their silhouettes with the darkness around them, they approached the barn, its wooden doors slightly ajar, creaking as the wind played with them. Inside, the smell of aged wood and rust filled the air, mingling with the scent of earth. Each step deeper into the barn felt like a step closer to freedom, or so they convinced themselves. Luke pushed the door wide open, the hinges squealing, sending a shiver down Tara's spine. "You two keep watch, I'll grab something good," he ordered with a blend of bravado and recklessness. In the wavering moonlight, they could see shelves lined with tools of every shape and size: rusty saws, old gardening hose, and a couple of battered shovels. To them, this was treasure. To Farmer Sam, it was a lifetime of hard work and dedication laid bare. But what they didn't know was that Farmer Sam was already awake, tending to a late-night project. He had sensed something off for days, like a storm brewing on the horizon. As he polished the metal of an old tractor, his instincts kicked in. A farmer knows their land better than anyone, and Sam was no exception. The dull sounds of movement drew his attention, and he took a moment to let the dread creep in. Someone was on his land. Just then, a loud crash echoed through the barn as Luke knocked over a pile of rusty equipment. Tara gasped, eyes wide as she looked up toward the entrance. "SHHH, it's fine, just," Luke hissed, but deep down he felt annoying unease. Outside, Sam stopped what he was doing and glanced at the barn, determination blazing in his eyes. There was no time to waste. He grabbed his trusty shovel, the weapon of choice for this kind of intruder. It wasn't just for digging, it was a symbol of his labor, his life. He didn't need a fancy tool to defend what belonged to him. Back inside the barn, Luke was digging through a pile, the metal clanking against one another. "I think I found something good," he exclaimed, holding it up like a trophy. Suddenly, the heavy barn doors swung open, and in stepped Farmer Sam, towering and formidable, his silhouette framed by the moonlight. He bellowed, voice deep and commanding, echoing off the wooden walls. Luke's bravado shattered like glass. Tara's heart raced. She felt like she had been punched in the gut. They were caught, and fear gripped them as they turned to face the farmer, who loomed like a storm cloud ready to unleash its fury. We were just, looking for some old stuff," Luke stammered, the confidence draining from his voice. Sam repeated, disbelief oozing from his words. "This is my life's work you're messing with." Panic surged through Luke as his mind scrambled for a way out. He barked, trying to sound persuasive. "You're in the middle of a crime," Sam yelled, stepping forward, shovel in hand. It wasn't raised as a weapon, but its presence was menacing. It was a reminder of the sweat and tears spilled on this land. Tara was the first to find her voice. "We should go," she pleaded, regret flooding her heart, but Jack wasn't ready to back down just yet. "Let's just take one thing and leave," he rushed, trying to retain some sense of control that had long since slipped away. Sam snapped, his grip tightening around the shovel. "Your lives, because this isn't just about tools." Their collective fear transformed into desperation. Luke's mind raced as he processed it all, the cost of their choices, the recklessness that had driven them here. We thought we could just take what we wanted," he confessed, a tremor in his voice. Sam's eyes blazed, reflecting the hurt and anger of countless evenings spent battling the elements, protecting the land he loved. The weight of his words struck like a lightning bolt. Each of them felt it cut through the bravado they had worn like armor. This was no longer about tools. It was about integrity, respect, and the very fabric of their identities. The reality settled in. This wasn't just a random farm, it was someone's home built through hard work and dedication. Luke shifted uncomfortably, his bravado faltering. "We're sorry, we thought you wouldn't mind," he said quietly. Sam echoed, incredulous. "Do you know how hard I work for what you're considering taking? This land is my life. Every inch you see has a story, a struggle, and you want to strip it away for what?" Jackson shrank back, suddenly feeling small. "Maybe we should just leave," he stammered, glancing at Tara for support, who nodded vigorously, her instincts kicking in. "Smart move," Sam replied, his voice easing though still filled with the weight of the moment. "You can walk away from this and learn something." Tara sensed the shift in Luke, the way his resolve wavered, the mists of doubt swirling in his eyes. "Let's go," she urged again, urgency punctuating her words. As they backed toward the door, Sam lowered his shovel just enough for them to see he wasn't trying to intimidate them without cause. He wasn't just a farmer, he was a teacher, a man with wisdom earned from the soil and sky. "Prove you're better than this," Sam called after them. In the undercurrents of the moment, something shifted. The weight of their choices settled heavily around them as they slipped back into the safety of the night, hearts thumping in their chests. The realization hung in the air like a dense fog. They were not just fleeing, they were running from a pattern, a cycle they had been trapped in without even knowing it. Once they reached the road, the moon casting silvery shadows over them, silence reigned. Each of their minds spun, questioning what had just transpired. Luke, usually brimming with bravado, now felt cold inside. He murmured, more to himself than to his friends. "Maybe we need to change," Tara suggested, kicking at the dirt beneath her feet, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Jackson asked, his youthful optimism fading into confusion. "We could stop racing after quick scores," Luke admitted, the weight of introspection pressing on him. That night marked the beginning of their transformation, though it would take time and courage to break free from the chains of their past. Days turned into weeks, and the pain of shame morphed into resolve. They began volunteering, helping those in their community rather than taking from them. At first, it felt foreign, almost surreal, but with each act of kindness, they learned the joy of giving. They discovered that real strength came not from the thrill of the steal, but from the hard work of rebuilding and growing. Weeks turned into months, and soon they found themselves at the same farm where it had all begun. Their hearts pounded as they approached Sam, offering a hesitant wave. There he was, working under the sun, sweat glistening on his forehead as he tended to the lush crops. He glanced up, surprise flitting across his features, and a smile broke out. Luke stepped forward, courage swelling in his chest. "We're here to help, Sam." For a moment, Sam's expression didn't waver, as if he were assessing their sincerity. He challenged, but he held the shovel down at his side, revealing a flicker of interest. "We want to learn. We've changed. We want to understand what it takes to work this land." Tara spoke earnestly, her voice steady. Sam looked between them, the years of hard work etched in the lines of his face. And just like that, they stepped into the role they never thought they'd accept. With each passing day, they learned about planting, harvesting, and the timeless dance between man and nature. They worked alongside Sam, understanding the grit and persistence it took to cultivate the land. They became part of something greater than themselves, each sunrise marking a new beginning and each sunset a quiet reflection of their growth. Farmer Sam not only opened his heart but shared his wisdom, allowing them to transform their lives while grounding them in purpose and hard work. Each tool in the barn became a lesson learned, not just about farming, but about life, integrity, and the value of community. In the heart of that vast land, they forged bonds, not just with Sam, but with each other, shaking the chains of their past and stepping into a future brighter than they had ever imagined. As the seasons turned, the three of them found peace, not in easy scores, but in the sweat and satisfaction that came from building something good, something worthwhile. They faced their fears, not as thieves slipping into the night, but as honest individuals contributing to a legacy they could be proud of. In every sunrise and sunset over Farmer Sam's fields, they found a piece of themselves, a reminder that sometimes true fortune lies not in what you can take, but in what you can build together. And in that, they found redemption, strength, and a new beginning. The moon hung low over the horizon, casting a silvery glow on the quiet expanse of farmland. In the stillness of the night, three figures crept through the rows of corn, their hearts racing with anticipation. They whispered among themselves, excitement tinged with fear, each step bringing them closer to what they believed would be a quick score. "Just a few tools," Luke urged, his voice barely above a whisper. "No one will miss them." He felt invincible, a rogue ready to seize the night. Luke had always leaned into that reckless side of himself, wanting nothing more than to escape his mundane life. Tara asked, her voice laced with anxiety as she glanced nervously at the expansive farmhouse in the distance, a silhouette against the starry sky, looming larger than life. "Come on, don't be such a baby," Jackson chimed in, trying to bolster their spirits. "It's just some old stuff." They moved quickly, adrenaline pumping through their veins as they wormed their way around the rows of corn, soaking in the thrill of the heist. They had tracked this farm for weeks, observing the lazy tempo of life that surrounded it, convinced no one would even notice their absence. As they neared the barn, they could see it weathered, with peeling paint and rusted metal fixtures, a treasure trove just waiting for their hands to tear it apart. The barn door stood ajar, a perfect invitation into a hidden world of abandoned dreams. Tension tightened in Tara's chest as they approached. She pleaded, anxiety creeping in. "Right or wrong has nothing to do with it," Luke said, pushing the door open with a creak that sounded like a warning bell. Inside the barn, the smell of aged wood and the mustiness of neglect enveloped them like a shroud. Every nook harbored remnants of labor, tools long forgotten, and memories embedded in the walls. Luke moved with confidence, rummaging through the clutter, while Tara and Jackson stood watch, unease pooling in their stomachs. Just as Luke unearthed a rusty shovel, a noise shattered the silence, footsteps crunching on gravel outside. Their hearts raced, a cold splash of fear washing over them. Tara whispered frantically, eyes darting toward the entrance. Luke hissed, holding up the shovel like a trophy, a mix of pride and reckless abandon lighting his eyes. But as the footsteps grew louder, so did the pulse of anxiety inside them. Luke's bravado faded as uncertainty seeped into his bones. Then the barn door swung open, casting a shadow that enveloped them all, and stepped Farmer Sam, a tall figure with a weathered face and eyes that spoke of hard work and long nights. He held a lantern, illuminating the barn's dark corners, revealing the three looters caught in the act like deer frozen in headlights. Sam's voice boomed, a deep rumble that echoed off the walls. Panic surged through Luke. He stammered, blinking rapidly as adrenaline flooded his system. "You're here to steal my property," Sam stated, the disappointment clear in his tone. "Is this how low you've sunk?" Tara felt her stomach sink, guilt flooding in like a tidal wave. We didn't mean any harm, sir," she began, searching for words that would somehow justify their foolishness. Sam interrupted, moving closer, his shadow looming over them, "that I wouldn't notice." Luke turned to his friends, an internal battle raging in his mind. This wasn't how he envisioned this night playing out. He had wanted an easy score, not a confrontation with a man who embodied resilience. Jackson mumbled, his bravado disintegrating. Trouble had found them, whether they wanted it or not. Sam's gaze locked onto Luke, intense yet not without a hint of understanding. "You think you'll get away with this?" The weight of those words hung heavy in the air, echoing like a warning bell. Luke could feel the tide of their choices crashing down on him. This wasn't just some random act of mischief. It was an outright assault on someone's livelihood. "We just saw an opportunity," he said, forcing bravado into his tone. "Didn't think," Sam echoed, shaking his head. "That's the problem, isn't it? You didn't think about me, the years I've spent laboring in the dirt, trying to make a living." Tara looked at Luke, desperation pooling in her eyes. "We can leave, right? We can just go." "I'm sorry." But Sam raised a hand, cutting her off. "You think you can just walk away after this, that it'll all be fine if you leave?" The trio exchanged glances, uncertainty mingling with fear. Luke found himself standing at a crossroads, every reckless decision he'd ever made flashing before his eyes. In that moment, he realized the gravity of their actions. "If you want to make things right, you need to understand the weight of your choices," Sam said, his tone softening slightly. "This land isn't just soil, it's my family's legacy. Every tool you see here holds a story, a memory." Luke gulped, the truth of Sam's words hitting him like a jolt. Here was a man who had fought battles he could never see, struggles woven into the very fabric of this land. "I didn't think about it like that," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then think now," Sam replied, the seriousness of the moment settling around them. Each second felt like an eternity, and Luke could sense the turning tide. The trio had come with plans for a quick score, yet here they were standing before a man who dedicated his life to something far more profound than they had ever considered. The tension hung thick in the barn, a storm brewing in the hearts of these young looters. "We need to help you," Tara suggested, surprising herself as the words tumbled out. "We could work here." Luke felt a spark of hope ignite within him, a chance to redeem themselves, to rebuild instead of destroy. "I mean, we've got time. We can try to help in any way we can," he added, feeling the weight of the moment shift. Sam studied them, weighing their sincerity and youth against their previous choices. "You think it's that easy?" "Yeah," Jackson said, gaining confidence. "We could work hard." Sam crossed his arms, his expression softening just enough to reveal a flicker of interest. "All right, if you genuinely want to learn about how this land works, prove it. Start tomorrow at dawn." Tara and Jackson exchanged glances, hope blooming in their chests. They had come here expecting to steal, but found a chance at redemption instead. "We'll be here, Sam, we promise," Luke said, determination threading through his voice. As they left the barn under the cloak of night, each step felt lighter than the last. The thrill of a heist had turned into the weight of responsibility, a duty that would shape their lives for the better. They walked up the path back to their homes, minds swirling with anticipation. The next day came far too quickly, the sun peeking over the horizon as they kicked off their shoes and rolled up their sleeves, ready to face the challenges ahead. Sam welcomed them at the barn, a hint of a smile breaking his stern demeanor. "Let's see if you're worth your weight in sweat," he chuckled, his tone gentle yet firm. As the day wore on, they learned how to till the soil, plant seeds, and tend to the crops. Each task was a lesson, and with each drop of sweat, they began to understand the dignity of hard work. They no longer saw tools as objects for taking, but as instruments of creation. Days turned into weeks, and the labor transformed them in ways they hadn't expected. They developed a bond with Sam that was rooted not just in their mistakes, but in mutual respect and understanding. He shared stories of his family and the land while they worked, painting vivid pictures of the value of persistence. There was a day when they watched a storm roll in, dark clouds gathering ominously, threatening to ruin the crops. As they worked together to secure everything, they felt part of something, a team fighting against nature, sharing the burden and pride that came with a harder life. One night, as they sat around a campfire, they shared laughter and dreams, each revealing glimpses of their past, their fears, and their hopes for the future. "I used to think about quick cash," Luke admitted, staring into the flames. Tara nodded, her voice thick with emotion. "I've realized that it's not just about me." And Jackson, ever the optimist, grinned. "We may have started as thieves, but now we're farmers." As the hours turned into days and weeks bled into months, the trio became more than just workers. They became part of Farmer Sam's family, dedicated to nurturing each other and the land. But change does not come without its trials. One day, a storm struck harder than they anticipated, its winds whipping through the fields like a feral beast. They worked tirelessly to protect the crops, desperation driving them forward as they banded together against nature's fury. Sam shouted over the howling wind, his voice a rallying cry. The unity they had developed shone through that night. Together, they fought off nature's relentless onslaught, planting their roots deeper. When dawn finally broke, the storm had passed, and they emerged into the light, breathless but triumphant. They caught their first glimpses of the aftermath. The farm stood resilient, the crops swaying gently in the breeze. They cheered together, victory coursing through their veins, the sweat of their labor shining like jewels on their skin. Sam remarked, a grin spreading across his weathered face. "You did this. And in that moment, it sunk in. Their journey had transformed from one of theft to one of perseverance, from looting to legacy. They had come together not just to work the land, but to reshape their lives. Months later, under a canopy of stars, Luke, Tara, and Jackson stood shoulder to shoulder with farmer Sam, looking out over the vast fields they had nurtured together. They had faced their troubled past and transformed it into a bright future. Beneath the heavens, they laughed and shared stories, grateful for the path they had walked together. And while life wouldn't be devoid of challenges, there was a sense of accomplishment. They had reclaimed their lives through hard work, camaraderie, and understanding. They learned the value of respect, not only for the land, but for each other. It became clear that true treasure wasn't found in what you could take, but in what you could cultivate together. And with that knowledge, they faced tomorrow, united in purpose and driven by the legacy of a simple farmer who had once stood between them and their greed. They had found hope in a field of dreams, transforming their lives one sunrise at a time. It was the whisper of an echo from a simpler time, a time when families tended to the land with love and patience. But now darkness wrapped around the fields, and three figures crept along the overgrown path leading to the barn. Their hearts raced with anticipation, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Luke, the leader of the trio, felt a thrill that felt almost electric. This was going to be an easy score, a quick grab that would turn their lives around. "Just think about it," he said, a wild gleam in his eyes. "A few tools, some old equipment." Tara and Jackson exchanged unsure glances, but the allure of easy money was too hard to resist. Tara, the more cautious of the two, whispered, "What if we get caught?" "Don't worry," Luke insisted, brushing aside her fears. "It'll be fine." As they slunk closer to the barn, the wind whispered secrets through the tall grass, and the shadows seemed to dance in the moonlight. Their hearts pounded with the thrill of the impending heist, each step bringing them closer to that promised payday. Luke pushed open the barn door, a rusty hinge squealing in protest, penetrating the silence of the night. Inside, the smell of aged wood and the damp earth hit them like a wall. Faint moonlight flickered through the windows, illuminating the clutter of forgotten tools and machinery. Old tractors, shovels, and worn-out gloves lay strewn about, remnants of labor and dedication. Luke felt his excitement soaring. Look at all this stuff. But even as the words left his mouth, a knot of dread twisted in Tara's stomach. "We really shouldn't be doing this," she muttered, glancing nervously at the barn's entrance. They were trespassing, breaking a fundamental rule, and it felt wrong. Just then, a door creaked open, and from the shadows stepped Farmer Sam, a sturdy man built like the oak trees lining the fields. His face was weathered like the barn, carved by years of hard work and determination. In his hand, he clutched a lantern, the light casting an eerie glow over the three intruders. He demanded, his voice booming through the barn, sending chills down their spines. Luke's bravado evaporated. We were just, looking for something," he stammered, the excitement of the heist suddenly replaced by fear. Sam shifted his weight, eyes narrowing as he surveyed the trio. "You're here to steal," he said, disappointment lacing his tone. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The air hung heavy with tension, a force that pressed down on them. Tara's heart raced, and she felt her breath quickening. "We didn't mean any harm," she finally managed to say, trying to find a way to defuse the situation. Sam echoed, shaken by their audacity. "You think that's enough? This land is my life. Every tool you see belongs to the countless hours I've spent toiling in these fields." Desperation coursed through Luke. He hadn't imagined this night would end in a confrontation. "We just thought." Sam's anger simmered just beneath the surface. The reality of their actions collapsed around them like a house of cards. They had come seeking quick cash without thinking of the consequences, without even considering the man who had poured his heart into this place. The trio stood frozen, guilt and fear enveloping them as Sam stepped closer, the lantern casting deep shadows over his face. "Why don't you tell me what you were planning to do with these tools? Sell them." His words cut deep, exposing the raw truth of their intentions. "Listen," Tara interjected, her voice trembling. "We can leave. We didn't mean to trespass or hurt you." Luke could feel the weight of their choices crushing down on him. "Yeah, we'll leave," he said hastily, backpedaling. But Sam wouldn't let them escape that easily. "Oh, it's not that simple. You think you can just walk away from this? You're not the first to try taking from me. It never ends well." The trio exchanged glances, uncertainty hanging in the air. Fear gripped them, but they realized too late the danger they had stepped into. Jackson, who had been silent until now, finally found his voice. Sam studied them, his piercing gaze softening just a hint. "What do you deserve? You have a choice. You can show me that you're better than this, that you want to change, or you can walk away with nothing but shame." Tara felt a flicker of something inside her, a sense of responsibility, perhaps. She proposed hesitantly. Sam raised an eyebrow, a hint of curiosity breaking through his stern expression. "You think you can just waltz in and expect me to trust you?" "It's worth a try," said Luke, feeling that tiny flicker of hope ignite into a flame. "We'd be willing to work hard." The tension in the barn seemed to crack, the weight of the moment shifting. Sam watched them carefully, his expression evaluating their sincerity. "If you truly want to change, I'll give you a chance. You can start here." As they nodded, a sense of relief washed over them, but it was mingled with apprehension. They had a chance to redeem themselves, to do something that mattered, but it wouldn't come easy. "Show up tomorrow at dawn," Sam instructed, turning the lantern down, signaling the end of their encounter. That night, the three of them huddled together, still buzzing from the adrenaline of their earlier escapade. It was surreal that they had stumbled into a transformative opportunity instead of facing the harsh reality of the law. Dawn broke with a canvas of orange and pink streaking across the sky, casting warm light over the fields. They arrived at the farm, trepidation mixing with excitement as they stood in front of the barn, the weight of their past heavy on their shoulders. Sam met them at the door, a shovel resting against his side, a look of determination on his face. "Today you start learning. There's a lot to do and much to prove. You think you can just swing a shovel and call it work?" With that, he handed them each a tool, the feeling foreign in their hands compared to the thrill of nefarious pursuits. The first few weeks were tough. They learned about tilling the soil, understanding when to plant seeds and what it meant to provide for the earth. Sam walked them through the ins and outs of farming, his weathered hands showing them how to nurture plants so they could yield a bountiful harvest. At first, they struggled. Tara often found herself nearly overwhelmed by the physical labor, her body aching at night. But as days turned into weeks, the hard work began to bear fruit literally and metaphorically. They learned to sweat, to understand the effort required to grow something real. One evening, as they stood in the fading light, the fields stretched out before them, golden grains dancing in the soft breeze. They shared stories over a humble meal. "This is harder than I ever imagined," Jackson admitted, wiping his brow. "And yet I feel accomplished," Tara said. The sense of purpose was intoxicating, pushing away their previous guilt. No longer were they defined by a single moment of weakness. They were building something worthwhile instead. Sam joined them, setting down his empty plate with a satisfied grin. "See, it's not just about the work, it's about creating a legacy." With every passing week, they formed a rhythm and with it, a bond. They began to experience the satisfaction of planting and nurturing. The days of theft felt more like a distant memory, each sunrise ushering in new opportunities rather than the pursuit of quick gains. But life isn't without challenges. One afternoon, a storm rolled in unexpectedly, dark clouds swirling ominously above. Luke, Tara, and Jackson rushed to secure equipment, scrambling against the fierce winds. Sam shouted above the roar of the storm, his voice a guiding beacon in the chaos. In that moment, they felt a sense of belonging. This was about more than themselves. They were part of something greater, a community fighting against nature's fury. They banded together, working quickly to ensure everything was safe. The storm raged outside, but inside their hearts, determination blazed brightly. After the storm passed, they emerged to assess the damage. Miraculously, the barn had stood firm. The crops, however, bore the scars of the tempest, a stark reminder that nature can be as unforgiving as it is generous. But as they surveyed the fields, a sense of unity filled the air. "We did it together," Tara remarked, a smile breaking across her face. Sam nodded, pride gleaming in his eyes. "That's what it's all about. You learn to stand together against challenges." Months slipped by as seasons changed, and with them, so too did their hearts. Luke, Tara, and Jackson had begun this journey as looters, but emerged as farmers, wearing the sweat of their labor like armor against the storms of their past. As autumn approached, they gathered for their first harvest together, the fruits of their labor filling baskets. The scent of earth and produce wafted through the air, melding with the crisp autumn breeze. They had transformed, each stride forward full of purpose. Standing together amidst the bounty of the land, Luke turned to Sam and said, "Thank you for giving us a chance." "Thank you for proving that redemption is real," Sam replied, a smile playing on his lips. In that moment, they felt something shift, not just within themselves, but also in the land around them. They had become stewards of the earth, learning to nurture rather than take. They had found a deeper meaning, a connection that couldn't be severed by reckless choices. As they celebrated their harvest, laughter and joy floated through the fields like a song of resilience, redemption, and hard-earned triumph. They had turned their lives around, forged new paths, and discovered that the heart of the land beat in sync with their own. Those who had once arrived in darkness had walked into the light. The journey from looters to farmers was not just a journey of survival. It was a journey of growth, reflection, and transformation, a lesson learned in the love of hard work and the bond forged in resilience. And as they lifted their glasses to the future, the sunset painted a promise in the sky. Each dawn would bring another opportunity to build something worth fighting for. The moon hung high in the starry sky, a pale sentinel watching over the quiet farmland below. Shadows danced around the old barn, its wooden frame creaking with age. In the stillness of the night, 3 figures crept along the gravel path, their hearts pounding in rhythm with their reckless ambitions. Tonight, they were looters, ready to make a quick score. Luke whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. He could taste the thrill of the heist, an intoxicating mix of adrenaline and anticipation coursing through his veins. He had planned this for weeks, each detail etched into his mind like a blueprint for success. Tara, who followed closely behind, hesitated, a knot forming in her stomach. She asked, glancing nervously toward the dark silhouette of the farmhouse in the distance. It seemed to loom larger under the ghostly glow of the moon, a watchful guardian hovering over its domain. Jackson, the youngest of the trio, shrugged off her concerns. "Come on, it's just some old junk, no one will notice." His youthful enthusiasm was contagious, driving Luke forward despite Tara's lingering doubts. As they approached the barn, the air felt electric with the promise of easy money, yet an unsettling feeling nagged at the back of Tara's mind. The path was overgrown and wild, and for a moment she considered turning back. But the thrill of adventure pulled her onward, and before she knew it, they stood before the barn doors, each breath heavy with anticipation. "Let's do this," Luke declared, pushing the door open with a creak that echoed in the darkness. The smell of damp wood and the remnants of old hay enveloped them, filling their lungs with history. They stepped inside, the dim light illuminating the clutter of forgotten tools, rusty nails, old saws, and weathered shovels. Luke exclaimed, excitement bubbling over as he rummaged through the piles. In all his life, he had never seen so many discarded relics, remnants of hard work that was now up for grabs. Just then, the barn door swung open with a bang, cutting through the excitement like a knife. The trio froze as a tall figure stepped inside, silhouetted by the moonlight. Farmer Sam stood there, the lantern in his hand illuminating his rugged features. His eyes, a piercing blue, scanned the scene before him, and the weight of his presence sent palpable shockwaves through the air. Sam's voice boomed, reverberating within the barn, striking fear deep into their chests. Panic surged through Luke, who stuttered, we were just, Sam frowned. Tara felt her heart drop into her stomach. They were caught. The thrill that once bolstered her confidence was replaced by fear, suffocating and heavy. She exclaimed, desperation lacing her voice. Sam mocked, taking a step closer, his lantern casting ominous shadows around them. "You think you can just take what you want? You're trespassing on my land." Luke's bravado crumbled beneath the weight of Sam's words. "We're sorry," Sam interrupted, anger flaring in his voice, "that you could take from someone who has fought day in and day out to keep this farm alive." Each word hit like a blow, and the trio stood frozen, guilt flooding them. They hadn't anticipated this confrontation. They had come seeking treasure, but now they found themselves staring into the eyes of a man who embodied hard work and resilience, a fierce protectiveness radiating from him. Sam demanded, the intensity in his gaze unwavering. "Sell them." A lump lodged in Luke's throat as he struggled to respond. "It was just a stupid idea. We need money," he stammered, but the justification felt hollow. The weight of reality pressed down on them, exposing the reckless folly of their actions. Tara felt regret wash over her, and she glanced between her friends, the panic building. "Can we just leave? We didn't mean any harm," she pleaded, fear rippling through her. But Sam stood firm, the shovel resting heavily in his hand. "You think you can just walk away from this? It doesn't work like that." Tension filled the air, causing their hearts to pound in unison with an adrenaline-fueled fear. Jackson finally asked, his voice trembling. Sam stared at them, empathy softening his hardened expression. "You have two options: face the consequences of your actions or prove to me that you're better than this." Luke felt the weightiness of those words. In the grip of fear and desperation, he saw a flicker of hope. He suggested, surprising himself with the statement, "Instead of taking, we could work here." Sam's eyebrows shot up, a glimmer of interest in his eye. "Work here? Do you even know what that entails? This isn't a game. Farming is hard work," he warned, skepticism dancing across his brow. "I know," Tara said quickly, her voice gaining strength, "but we need to make things right." For a moment, Sam was silent, weighing their offer against his anger. "If you genuinely want to change, you can start by helping me tomorrow morning at dawn. I need all the help I can get." They nodded vigorously, gratitude flooding their senses. This was an unexpected twist, but it was a second chance, an opportunity to redeem themselves. As they left the barn, the fear slowly ebbed away, replaced by a sense of purpose. For the first time in a long while, they felt alive and ready to take responsibility for their actions. The next morning arrived with a breathtaking sunrise painting the sky in warm hues of orange and yellow. The trio stood outside the farmhouse, anticipation mixed with nervous energy. They had no idea what hard work awaited them, but they were ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Sam met them at the door, a sturdy figure with calloused hands and a determined look. "Today you start learning how to work this land. Farming isn't just labor, it's a way of life," he said, his voice commanding yet reassuring. With that, he handed them each tools, shovels, hoes, and seed packets. They felt the weight of their past lift slightly as they took their positions beside him, ready to earn their place on the farm. The work was grueling. Under the sun's relentless gaze, they learned to till the soil, plant seeds, and nurture the crops. The toil challenged their bodies and minds, but with each passing day, they grew stronger. Luke, once fueled by thrill-seeking, now found purpose in the rhythm of labor, dragging the hoe through the earth and feeling the sweat trickle down his brow. Tara discovered a fierce determination within herself, a newfound pride in each seed they sowed. Jackson, fueled by their transformation, threw himself into their work, balancing eagerness with the reality of hard labor. But the physical challenges paled in comparison to the lessons they learned from Sam. He shared stories of hardship, how he had toiled through droughts, storms, and setbacks, but never once had he given up on the land or his dreams. He taught them to appreciate the simplicity of life, to connect with the earth and each other. Days turned into weeks, and the trio began to find their rhythm. They worked together, teasing one another, laughing about their early days as looters. Slowly, they developed a bond, finding strength in unity. The transformation was palpable. They were no longer just seekers of quick gains, but builders of something real. One afternoon, as they gathered around a simple meal after a long day's work, Sam looked at them, satisfaction brewing beneath his weathered exterior. "You've come a long way." Luke nodded, appreciating the statement more than he ever thought he could. "Thank you for believing in us," he said sincerely. But challenges persisted. One fateful day, a storm rolled in unexpectedly dark clouds swirling ominously above them. The wind howled, tearing through the fields, and with it came the fear of losing everything they had built together. Sam shouted, urgency in his voice. The trio sprang into action, racing against the elements, fighting the harsh winds. He insisted. In the chaos, they found a newfound sense of purpose. The fear that once consumed them turned into determination, uniting them in a way they never expected. They fought side by side, securing the barn doors and covering the crops with makeshift barriers. When the storm passed, they emerged into the open air, breathless and wide-eyed. The field stood largely intact, a testament to their hard work paying off. They cheered together, relief washing over them like a wave. But the storm also left behind remnants of struggle, an urgent reminder that life on the farm would always have unpredictability. As they resumed their tasks, a bond formed deeper than any they had known before. They recognized that the storms of life were not only to be endured, but faced head-on. This became their mantra moving forward. Months passed, and as summer turned to fall, they stood together for their first harvest, a culmination of toil, sweat, and transformation. The fields lay before them, bursting with golden crops ready for collecting. The sunset cast a warm glow over the land, a fitting backdrop for their newfound purpose. Jackson exclaimed, his excitement bubbling over. "Together we did this," Tara agreed, pride swelling in her chest. Sam gazed across the landscape, a smile breaking through his weathered exterior. "You've earned every bit of this." In that moment, Luke turned to Sam, gratitude filling his voice. "Thank you for giving us a chance. You've shown us that there's so much more to life than what we were chasing before." Sam nodded, understanding reflected in his eyes. Redemption is always possible. As they gathered their harvest together, laughter and joy erupted through the fields, and the bonds they had forged deepened. From looters to farmers, they had rewritten their narrative, transforming their lives from tales of theft to stories of growth. That night, they celebrated around the fire, food shared and laughter echoing against the backdrop of a starlit sky. Each of them, now part of a family forged through hard work and loyalty, reflected on their journey, realizing the transformation was more than just physical. It had been a journey of the heart. They had faced their choices and emerged wiser. No longer were they defined by a single night's folly, but rather by the resilience they had discovered within themselves. The fields thrived beneath the sun, a testament to the beauty of hard work, perseverance, and community. As they lifted their glasses to toast, the sky shimmered with stars, each one a reminder of the path they had walked together. They had learned that life is about choices. Some lead us astray, while others guide us home. United as farmers, they looked toward the future, ready to nurture not just the land, but each other. Together, they were not just rebuilding a farm, they were cultivating a legacy, one rooted in redemption, integrity, and the profound understanding that sometimes it takes losing your way to find the true meaning of life. And in that realization lay the greatest treasure of all. The sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the small farm in an eerie orange glow. Shadows danced across the fields, rustling under a sudden gust of wind. It was the perfect night for a heist, silent and shrouded in darkness. 3 figures crept cautiously along the overgrown path, hearts racing with an intoxicating blend of fear and excitement. They were here for a quick score, and they thought this would be easy. "Just a few tools," Luke whispered, his voice low and shaky with adrenaline. He had a swagger about him, the self-appointed leader of this reckless trio, restless for an escape from the mundane life he led. Tara, the cautious one, glanced anxiously at the farmhouse in the distance. "What if the owner comes back? We shouldn't be doing this," she said, her voice trembling. The farm seemed almost alive, every creak and rustle amplifying her fear. "Please grow a spine," Jackson, the youngest of the 3, scoffed, rolling his eyes. "This is just old junk." His eagerness was contagious, igniting the fire inside Luke once more. As they neared the barn, it loomed before them like a treasure chest waiting to be cracked open. Moonlight poured through the cracks in the wooden walls, illuminating the scene inside: rusty saws, shovels, and neglected farming equipment that once meant something to someone. Luke exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with greed. He took a step inside, pushing the door open wide, the hinge protesting loudly, a warning that went unnoticed. They were in, and the thrill of their audacious plan hung thick in the air. But suddenly the sound shattered the stillness. Footsteps, heavy and determined. Panic seized Tara's throat. "Okay, this is bad." Luke's bravado faltered. "SHH, I'm sure it's nothing," he replied, but the tremor in his voice suggested otherwise. From the shadows, a figure emerged, a tall, sturdy man with hands like hardened leather and eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. Farmer Sam stepped into the glow of the barn, lantern in hand, casting a warm yellow light that only highlighted his fierce expression. He demanded, his voice a mixture of confusion and anger reverberating against the walls. Caught in the act, they froze like deer in headlights. Luke stumbled over his words, but nothing coherent came out. Sam interrupted, his tone sharp as a blade. Tara instinctively took a step back, fear flooding her senses. She exclaimed, desperately trying to salvage the situation. Sam interrupted again, stepping closer, the lantern swinging slightly. You thought you could take what isn't yours. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Luke swallowed hard, battling the embarrassment clawing at his chest. He had always been the reckless one, looking for that thrill, but this was different. This was a man's life they were messing with, a man who didn't take what he had for granted. Sam asked, and his piercing gaze swept over them as though he could read their souls. Sell them for a quick buck. The silence was deafening. Thoughts raced through Luke's mind. We just thought we could take them and not be seen, he finally muttered. The confession tasted bitter as it left his lips. Sam replied, a hint of sadness creeping into his voice. You don't understand the value of hard work, do you? That these tools represent my livelihood? A pang of guilt struck Luke hard. He felt as if the ground beneath him was crumbling. Tara, too, felt the heaviness loom over her like a storm cloud. Stripped of their bravado, they realized just how foolish they had been. Tara suddenly blurted out, the words spilling like a last-ditch attempt to save themselves. If you let us, we can work for you. Sam's expression shifted, a flicker of hesitation crossing his features. Help me. Jackson chirped in, desperation clear in his voice. We want the chance to prove we're better than this. For a moment, the tension hung thick like an invisible rope around their throats. Sam studied them, searching for sincerity. You think it's that easy? Please, Luke said, his voice cracking. We need this? Sam took a deep breath, weighing his options. After what felt like an eternity, he finally nodded, though skepticism still shadowed his features. Fine, you can start tomorrow, but if I catch you trying to take anything again, I won't hesitate to call the authorities. Yes, they said in unison, relief flooding over them. They had been given a second chance. As they turned to leave the barn, heart still pounding, Tara couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of hope and anxiety. Could they truly redeem themselves, or were they just postponing the inevitable? The next morning dawned bright and early. The sun cast golden hues over the fields as the trio arrived, feeling a combination of dread and excitement. Welcome to the world of hard work, Sam greeted, his voice gruff yet somehow welcoming. He handed them simple tools, shovels, rakes, and watering cans. At first, every movement felt foreign. Digging into the earth with a shovel, Tara quickly learned that true labor was filled with backaches and sweat. Luke could feel his body protesting every time he swung the rake, and Jackson struggled to keep pace, but something began to shift within them. With each passing day, they started to embrace the work, digging deeper not just into the soil but within themselves. Weeks went by and they were transforming. Sam taught them how to plant seeds, demonstrating the care needed for crops to thrive. They learned about the seasons, the planting, the harvesting, and everything in between. With each new lesson, they understood that growing food took patience, dedication, and love. I never realized how much effort goes into farming, Tara confessed one evening, exhausted but happy as she lounged on a pile of hay, the golden sunset reflecting off the fields. It's rewarding though, Luke added, watching the sun dip below the horizon. I feel I don't know more, but darkness wasn't far behind. Just as they started to feel at home, a loud knock broke the peace of the night. Sam's weary eyes widened as he opened the door to find two men standing there, their faces obscured by shadows, flanked by the harsh light of a flashlight. One of them shouted, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Sam demanded, tension lacing his voice as he stepped back, allowing them in. There are reports of looters in the area, the second man said, glancing sideways at the trio when he noticed them. We need to know if you've seen anything suspicious. Panic surged through the group. Had their past caught up with them? Would they be blamed for something they didn't do, despite their attempts to change? No, I haven't seen anything, Sam replied, trying to keep his composure, but the worry etched across his brow spoke volumes. Good, the first man said, unsatisfied yet unwilling to press further. As the men left, a storm brewed inside the barn. Sam turned to Luke, Tara, and Jackson, his expression darkening. You have to stay out of trouble. Luke stumbled over his words, feeling exposed. Sam snapped, you think you can erase your past just because you're working hard now? That night, tension seeped into their thoughts. The looming threat of being discovered hung like a dark cloud, and they couldn't escape it. Days turned into an anxious blur. They completed their tasks, but they felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them. Being honest meant facing the specter of their choices, and it shook them to their core. Would anyone ever forgive them? Everything came to a head when they were out tending to the fields one afternoon. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the barn, followed by shouts. They dropped their tools and sprinted toward the sound, their hearts pounding with dread. As they entered the barn, they were met with chaos. The place was in disarray, tools scattered, hay flying everywhere. And there, in the middle of it all, was Farmer Sam, struggling with two masked figures who had burst in. Luke yelled, the words erupting from his throat, amplified by adrenaline. The intruders turned, surprise flashing across their faces, but it quickly transformed into a malicious grin. One of them sneered. A couple of thieves caught on the wrong side of the law. Tara's heart raced as she grabbed a nearby shovel, her hands shaking. Your friend here, the other man said, pointing at Sam, who was still attempting to fend them off, has something we want. Jackson shouted, stepping forward despite the fear paralyzing him. The intruders laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the barn. One of them said, raising a fist threateningly, "You're nothing but losers." As panic crept in, Luke felt a surge of resolve. Their past haunted them, but they were no longer the people who had wandered into the barn with ill intent. He shouted defiantly, gripping the shovel tightly, feeling the weight of their choices at that moment. The realization hit hard. They were no longer the ones who took from others. They had changed. They had something worth protecting. As the masked figures lunged forward, Luke struck the ground fiercely with the shovel. It was more than just a weapon now. It was a symbol of their fight for redemption. Sam, empowered by their newfound strength, rallied alongside them. "We'll fight for this farm," he shouted, and together they pushed against the encroaching darkness. What happened next was uncertain, a blur of movement, fear, and adrenaline. The three looters who tried to make a quick score had transformed into defenders, standing together for what they believed in. It was no longer about their past, it was about the present, a moment where choices would define their future. As chaos unfolded in that barn, they forged a new path. Was it too late for them, or had they finally found their place? The fight was on, but what would it cost them? Would they emerge victorious, or would their past come crashing down around them once more? As the tension peaked, one question lingered. Would they finally become the heroes they never thought they could be? The answer was unwritten, lost in the storm of the fight, and as the world around them blurred, everything teetered dangerously on the edge.